Hello and welcome. It's Fiona Ross and this is your Work Out Your Money programme, Citizens Advice Haven't. We bring financial education into our local schools and we teach children as young as 6 and right into their college years about how to save, how to borrow wisely and even how to be able to read and understand a payslip. So they're all important life skills and the sort of stuff you can imagine will help them in the future. And as well as school lessons, we run workshops for adults in the community, either as part of a group or one-to-ones. As you probably already know as well, at Citizens Advice Haven't, we help our local people with regards to many issues, and claiming universal credit is just one. There is also the need to learn skills such as budgeting and how to save and borrow safely. And this is where Work Out Your Money steps in. We're sort of the educational arm of our local Citizens Advice. So today on our Work Out Your Money programme, we're going to be looking at the topic of borrowing. So, we're coming up to Christmas and there's always that sort of need where, it's more expensive time, then something happens like the car goes or the washing machine goes. And we don't want to borrow, but sometimes it's one of those sort of evil necessities in life. And the questions really here are where and who do we borrow from and making sure that we borrow safely, which is going to bring us on to our topic today of loan sharks. And we're very lucky to have with us today Cath Williams, who is the liaison manager with the England Illegal Money Lending Team. Welcome, Cath.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. So on today's money programme, we are talking about loan sharks. And as I mentioned just earlier, we have Cath Williams from the England Illegal Money Lending Team with us today. And I just wanted to ask Cath, because it was confusing when I first learned about this, can you tell us what a loan shark is? And how would somebody know how to spot one?
So a loan shark is someone who lends money without authorisation from the government. So if you want to lend money as a business, you have to get permission, basically. And they will check to make sure you're a fit and proper person, that you haven't got convictions for violence, that you're not bankrupt, that you haven't committed fraud in the past. Loan sharks don't have that permission. That's the criminal offence they commit. But they also tend to act in certain ways. So we find that loan sharks don't tend to give people paperwork, because that means that people don't know how much they've paid back and they don't track it, and the loan shark can carry on charging them for as long as they like. They also may actually resort to threats if people don't pay, because they can't take them to court to get their money back like a legitimate lender would. But unfortunately, they don't look like sharks and they don't walk around with a sign on saying loan shark. It can literally be anybody. So we've arrested people in their 70s. 1 in 5 of the people we arrested last year were female. It's not necessarily what you'd think. I had an image of Phil Mitchell when I started doing this job.
Me too.
With a baseball bat on the doorstep. But we do see loan sharks are much more diverse than that.
Yeah. So it's actually really important that, say, you're getting your message out today, that we educate people, even our children as well, as to what a loan shark looks like.
Absolutely.
Because it has changed an awful lot.
Yeah.
So, Cath, you were saying, different age groups, young and old. Can you give us some examples so that our listeners would sort of actually maybe recognise a loan shark if they're approached by one?
I think the big thing for us is no paperwork. Any loan that hasn't got paperwork attached to it is incredibly dubious and probably a loan shark. We do get the odd loan shark who will give out agreements to try and make themselves look legitimate, but most of them don't bother. So the biggest clue from our point of view is no paperwork. That would be a big warning bell ringing in my head.
Okay, and so when people say, oh, it's a friend that's I'm borrowing from, and that's why there's no paperwork, that's the point at which they've got to actually probably question that friendship and the relationship?
Absolutely. I think if your friends lent you £50 and you're going to pay them back £50 next week, obviously that's fine. It's much more someone who's doing it as a business, someone who's making money, someone who's lending to lots of people. And if it's muddy waters around how much you still owe, and certainly if it gets into threats, then that would be a loan shark to me.
Yeah, that's interesting, Cath, because actually the point at which the violence kicks in is where it turns bad.
Absolutely. And often it's not even violence, it's just threats. We have seen very few loan sharks resort to violence, but it's all about gaining control over people's lives and threatening what's important to them. And that's enough to keep people paying.
Thank you for that, Cath. It's really important that we actually, discuss this subject, because we are learning, from our point of view, Citizens Advice Haven't. We are learning a lot more about it as well. So back to our Work Out Your Money programme. We're chatting about loan sharks with Cath Williams, the liaison manager at the Illegal Money Lending Team. Cath, we were just chatting about loan sharks and sort of how to spot one. But let's say one of our listeners out there thinks they know of somebody or may have come into contact with a loan shark. what would they do, or how would they report one?
So you can report direct to us. We've got a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline, which is 0300 555 2222. And that's manned by an investigator at all times. It's not a call centre. It's not an answer phone. You'll get a real person, or a close approximation at 2 a.m. And you can also report via our website, which is stoploansharks.co.uk. And the important thing is, if you want to, you can report it anonymously. We will ask your name, but if you choose not to give it to us, that's absolutely fine. You won't be pushed on it. We take information in confidence, and I think the big thing for us is to let people have a conversation with us about support that's available. So there's nothing worse than sitting there feeling terrified that you've done something silly, that you've got yourself into a situation, that you're being threatened, and it's really isolating. And I think the important thing is to have a conversation with somebody, with your housing officer, with your debt advice worker, with us, and just find out what support's available and then decide what you want to do going forward.
Yeah, that's really important. So from what you say there, it's obviously in confidence. That's a very important part. And it can be done anonymously.
It can.
And also, I suppose, if somebody is not sure, at least it's nice to know there's somebody there that they can talk to and that they can talk us through with. You mentioned some organisations as well.
Yeah.
And I know it's Citizens Advice. We would also be very open to listening as well. And they might be able to help them spot those signs that it is a situation they've got themselves into. And you mentioned earlier on as well, Cath, that I think is really important, that these people are victims of crime.
Absolutely.
That they haven't done anything wrong.
No.
And it's important that they speak to you and your team so they can put it right.
Yeah, I think people don't report loan sharks for a number of reasons. Fear, shame, embarrassment, and also they don't know it's a criminal offence these people are committing, and they think they've done something wrong, but they are absolutely a victim of crime. And you wouldn't not report a burglary, so why would you not report a loan shark? Nothing bad has ever happened to anyone in 10 years that I've worked here who has reported a loan shark. Bad things happen when people don't report loan sharks.
No, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yes, of course. So do you have any examples of people who've actually reported in confidence to you or anonymously about perhaps a situation that they know of with a loan shark?
Absolutely, hundreds of them.
Okay, so it might be nice for our listeners to actually hear how they've actually fared out. I'm just chatting to Cath about loan sharks, and we were talking about what would happen if someone was to report a loan shark. So, Cath, you said you had a few examples of people who've actually come to you in confidence. Can you tell us how they've managed to get on since then?
So one lady we worked with recently, she told her housing officer in confidence that she'd borrowed from a loan shark, someone she thought was her friend, but turned out not to be. And the housing officer was concerned because she was in severe rent arrears as a result of paying the loan shark back and not paying her rent. She introduced the lady to a member of my team, and we're not the investigative side of the illegal money lending team, we're very much the support side. So over a period of months, we helped the lady sort out her housing problem, and my colleague gained her trust and got to a point where she was comfortable enough to speak to an investigator about what was happening to her. And she accepted that she was worthy of help, was what she said to us. She didn't feel at the beginning that she was, but after a while, after a few months working with us, she felt like she was worthy of help. The information led to the loan shark being arrested, being prosecuted. We sorted the lady's housing need out. We looked at her mental health issues as well. And now she's in so much of a better place. She's actually doing some media for us nationally to warn other people not to use loan sharks. So from being someone who wouldn't tell us her name the first time we met her, she's now going on the record nationally to tell people that this is a dangerous thing to do.
That's fantastic, because, you know, one of the hard things to do is to pick up the phone or to make that first move. And to know that there was no rush, that you've built her trust, and that you've actually helped her with other issues as well. It also shows, doesn't it, that it's, you know, the story behind why they've gone to the loan shark, the rent arrears,
absolutely,
the mental health issues. Yeah. It's quite an insight. Thank you for that example. That's really good. So, Cath, that was an interesting story because it showed us some more complex situations. Have you any other examples our listeners may be able to associate with?
I think one of the great tragedies of my job is that people don't get in contact with us until it's crisis point. So very rarely will someone ring the hotline when they're just being ripped off. They tend to ring at the point at which they're being threatened, or at the point of which they've got into so much financial difficulty they can't see a way out. And we have actually seen people who've been pushed to the point of suicide and considering taking their own life so that they wouldn't have to pay the loan shark anymore. And one of the key messages for us, I think, is phone us early, because help and support's available at any point on that journey.
That's a very important point, because earlier on you mentioned that there's no paperwork often involved. So that's your first sign, and that's the point at which hopefully people should contact you.
Absolutely. And if they've got any questions or concerns, if they're not sure if the lender's illegal or legal, we don't mind at all. Give us a ring.
Cath, we mentioned about sort of your work and how you're educating people as to how to spot loan sharks. We've actually been doing some work in our local schools as well, with your help, which has been great. And what we've been trying to do is tell children about the dangers of loan sharks. Now, what's been quite interesting for us is they didn't know about loan sharks. So do we need to get to our children to let them know?
Definitely, I think. So we've had cases where children have been targeted, sometimes by other children, sometimes by adults. So I can think of an example recently. Someone reported that a 14-year-old had sold his PlayStation and set himself up as a loan shark within the school and was lending people money. We had a case in Sheffield years ago. A barber on the estate was offering the children money. They had to pay back double what they borrowed, and he kept items such as mobile phones as security against their loans. But also, children are affected by what their parents do. So I can remember a case where the child from a family said to us they hated Thursdays because on Thursdays the money man came round and they had to hide behind the sofa and pretend they were out while he hammered on the door and shouted things through the letterbox. And that to me is such an impactful thing to hear, this child telling you that they hated Thursdays, and the teacher said they always misbehave on a Thursday and we didn't know why. And it's because they were dreading going home and they were dreading the money man coming round. And I think children are a really good way of getting messages home, certainly pre-teen, when they actually talk to the parents still. So we use them for that reason as well, but it's never too young to get the message out there that loan sharks are bad and other options are available.
Okay, so that's interesting, Cath. There's two angles there. There's the point at which the child themselves are vulnerable from, say, adults, like the barber story, or children within the school, which I hadn't actually thought of before, which is quite sad to hear, but also to help their parents. So what we've done, we've actually given them a leaflet on Stop Loan Sharks and how to spot one. So hopefully they can go home, start a conversation with their parents and talk about loan sharks.
Yeah.
And by bringing that into the home, maybe get the parents to think about what they could do to get themselves out of that situation.
Absolutely. I think what we were saying before about why people don't report, one of the big reasons is they don't know this person is a criminal and they don't know help and support's available. So by that leaflet going into the home, they will find out that they are the victim of crime and that there is a number they can call for help.
That's really useful. Thank you, Cath. Cath, I was just thinking, someone who is looking to borrow money and knows about the potential dangers of loan sharks but feels they've no alternative, what can we say to them?
Where else to go? That's always the question, isn't it? It's all very well saying don't do something, but you need a realistic alternative. We promote credit unions very heavily as the alternative to loan sharks because they are community-based organisations. They're run by local people. What they can charge in interest is capped by legislation at 3% a month. And we tend to find credit unions will offer small loans of £400-500, which is what people tend to go to loan sharks for. And the banks aren't really interested in that small amount of money.
No.
So that's why we promote credit unions very heavily.
That's good. We actually have a local credit union. It's the Wessex Community Bank. And the great thing is actually we're going to be talking to them in our next programme.
Excellent.
So hopefully our listeners will be able to see what the alternatives are. And also with credit unions, they are more relaxed. You mentioned community-based, but they're not as intimidating to go to than maybe a bigger bank or building society where somebody perhaps hasn't built up a credit rating. And those small amounts are very key, aren't they? £200, £300, £400.
Absolutely. Credit unions will look to help you. And if there is genuinely no way they can lend you money, they will look at why and what they can help you to do to get back on track, whether that's accessing debt advice or other forms of support, or just trying to save a little bit with them to build up your credence with them.
That's good. Cath, there's quite a lot to think about there, and an awful lot of key points that we should really go back over, because I've learned an awful lot about loan sharks today as well. There's been quite an awful lot of points to take into consideration. Can you sort of go through those key messages for us again for our listeners? It'd be really helpful.
No problem at all. So I think the two main things that we say, the first is, if you are not in debt with a loan shark currently, don't go there. It's not worth it. It may seem like it's easy cash, it may seem like it's a solution to a problem, but I've worked with people who've borrowed £200-300 and paid back literally tens of thousands. It is not worth it. Find another way. And I think to anyone who is in debt with a loan shark or thinks they know someone who is, it's that help and support is available. Call our hotline 0300 555 2222 or go to stoploansharks.co.uk for more information. And one of the key things we always say, if you're in debt, if you're struggling with debt, have a conversation about it. Talk to Citizens Advice and find out what your rights are and what you can do about it.
Thank you, Cath. I mean, that is actually such an important point. At Citizens Advice Haven't, we offer a lot of debt advice. It's one of our key areas. And that's also a very important point to mention, is that we're always looking for volunteers to help us to do this. So we have a volunteer event coming up shortly, if anybody's actually interested in volunteering with us. There's lots of different roles, from administration to advising to reception, and it doesn't stop there. We can tell you lots more if you come along to our event. It'll be on January the 30th, so save that date. It's very local. It's at Tesco at Haven't. So listen out on the Flash 104.3 FM, where we can actually tell you more about it over the coming weeks. You could also visit our website if you want to, at Citizens Advice Haven't. So you've been listening to Fiona Ross on Work Out Your Money, Citizens Advice Haven't. And we've been chatting to Cath Williams about loan sharks. And we're looking forward to coming back next time to chat a little bit more about our credit union, the Wessex Community Bank.